Welcome to the Build to Scale podcast. I'm your host, Areem Banshar, and today we have Peter Gudmundsson, CEO at BeHome247. Peter, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Great. So today, let's talk about all things AI and automation. But before we do that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you do, Peter, at BeHome247 and a little bit more about your role within the company.
Of course. All right. So the company's called BeHome247, as we mentioned. So we are a property technology company. What we do is we provide a tailored or a unified operations platform for two primary real estate spaces. One is the short-term or vacation rental space, and the other is the residential real estate space, which largely is single-family for rent and multifamily. Multifamily also includes some subcategories like senior housing and student housing and so on. So what the software does is it allows real estate owners and operators or their third-party property managers to do four things: save money, make money, reduce risk, and deliver a better resident experience. That's if you have an elevator pitch and there's only one floor to go up, that's the elevator pitch. The longer version is what the software does is it controls smart devices, so like locks, thermostats, noise detectors, leak detectors, motion detectors, all sorts of different types of hardware that send information about the physical environment to the cloud. And in the cloud, we then govern various or produce various operating workflows. So things like self-guided tours, digital leasing. A lot of people don't realize these days you can go find an apartment to rent, tour it, and sign the lease and never deal with a human. Do it all automatically through software like ours. And then more routine but important functions like maintenance management, energy management, vendor management, and so on. And then finally, resident communications. So from the resident standpoint, you'd have one app on your phone or your computer that would tell you everything that's going on in your house. And then if you're the property owner or the property manager who works for the owner, you would have one dashboard that would have all the information about your houses. And some landlords have not just hundreds, but thousands of houses or apartments. And so it allows them to say, okay, why at house number 362, an alarm just went off that why would the air conditioner be at 60 Fahrenheit on a summer day in Georgia when no one lives there? It's unoccupied right now. So there's clearly something wrong. Well, it turns out there was a plumber there yesterday fixing something who turned the air conditioner to a comfortable but very expensive level, and that needs to be fixed. And rather than sending a handy person out, you could just do it right online and fix that. So things like that. So it's automating the resident experience, both from the tenant or the resident's perspective, but also from the landlord's perspective. So that's if you're going up the Empire State Building. That's the longer elevator pitch.
I love that. Were you the founder of the company?
No, I'm actually the hired CEO. Our founder is our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, and he founded the business actually in the mid 2000s. And originally he lives in Destin, Florida, and it served the vacation rental space. That's where we started. And he's the real technologist, the real, I call him Scotty from Star Trek. He loves to solve problems, and that's what he's really, really good at. And then around 2019, he decided to get more serious with the business. It had really been running as a hobby business, but he decided to get serious, to take outside money, and a family office in Texas bought a majority stake, and one of their actions was to bring a quote-unquote real CEO in, and that's me. So that I came in almost 4 years ago.
Very cool. And what's your role within the company?
Yeah, so CEO, I was a U.S. Marine officer 1,000 years ago, and I learned a very simple thing. When you're in command, you're responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen. So that's what in short, that's what I do. But in particular, what any CEO does, and small technology companies are very typical of this, you actually sit between the capital and the labor. That's to put it in sort of quasi-Marxist terms. I have to answer to the ownership, of which I am one, but the board as a whole, which represents the ownership. and make sure that the strategy is correct, the operational priorities are aligned with that strategy, and that finally we're attacking with the right tactics to support the operations and the strategy. So that's really what a CEO does. And if you could talk all day. There are whole podcasts dedicated to this topic, but it's everything really getting the functions lined up, getting the right people in the right roles, all rowing in the right direction based on the right strategy, and that's really the task. And that's a little bit abstract, but that's essentially what it is. And then practical day to day, a lot of it's selling. Because I have a saying that there's only three things you can do in life: make stuff, sell stuff, and count stuff. And so in a smaller company, CEOs are still very involved with selling and the counting part too. It's just keeping track of, accounting records and collections and bill paying and that sort of stuff. Of course, we have a controller for that, but ultimately I'm responsible for that as well.
They're responsible for the entire company, basically, what you're saying.
Everything that happens or fails to happen, as I mentioned. Thankfully, we have a fantastic team, and that's what it's all about. We have a really, really good team here. People have been at it for a long time. Most come out of either the technology world or the hospitality world because of that vacation rental heritage. And one of the pleasant surprises I learned coming to this company 4 years ago was how hospitality is just a great place to source high quality talent, because it's people who are used to solving problems with humans and making decisions on the spot. Think about going to the front desk of a hotel at 3 a.m. to tell them that there's something wrong with your room. They fix things, and I love that background. I kind of wish I had discovered it earlier in my career. I would have recruited more actively out of people with hospitality backgrounds.
Nice. I think you're the first one who mentions that, but it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. You're right.
Yeah, it was a surprise to me too, and also it's a little bit like the military, as I mentioned earlier. In hospitality, young people get responsibility really quickly. You could be the night manager at a motel off the highway somewhere, and you're making decisions at 19 years old. That really gives builds good character and experience base for any sort of career.
Great. So maybe we can start talking about trends you're seeing in the tech industry. Maybe we can start high level and then we can narrow down, especially on topics like AI. But what are kind of the big trends you're seeing lately and maybe this year, the past 6 to 12 months, when it comes to dynamics shaping up the tech space?
Yeah, so of course I'm coming from I have a general observations and then very specific in the world of property technology, and but thankfully they're kind of the same, which is and we'll get to AI probably in some more detail in a little bit, but everything in technology, and it's the thing, when you're old enough, you see enough cycles that you see the patterns develop, and I'm that age where I've seen so many of these cycles develop and play themselves out. And the hype always outpaces reality. And in AI, in many ways, we're at the hype stage very much, but that doesn't mean that there's not quiet progress going on behind the scenes. So the hype sort of occupies the tech journalists and so on. But just think about like blockchain, for example. 5, 6 years ago, we were all breathless about blockchain. And by now, there were supposed to be no lawyers, no title companies, no need for, I mean, the whole world would be transformed because of blockchain. And sure enough, that's not been the case. But there's been an interesting progress here and there, and crypto and various things have developed and continue to develop, but not nearly at the pace or the comprehensive level. And AI, I believe, will be the same way. That it's just not going. Well, we'll get to AI in a bit, but technology in general, I think, because there's been a fair amount of economic uncertainty in most Western markets, I think that has led people to a more conservative approach to technology. With money being a little bit more expensive, people can't just raise a lot of free money and throw it at problems. So people are more conservative, more. I know you're a Canadian, but the American state of Missouri's motto is "Show me." The "Show me" state. It's like prove it to me. There's a lot more of a sense of that sounds great, but I'm not looking for hype. I'm looking for results. So what's the ROI? What are the metrics? What will this actually do for me? As I said at the beginning, to make money or save money or deliver a better experience or some combination thereof. So that's really, I think it's more of I guess an overused term. The vibe shift is very much towards a conservative, don't change the world, just make my life a little better.
You're echoing a lot of other conversations with similar takeaways we've had with other leaders in the space. Economy is a little bit different today. Getting funding from investors is a lot more challenging than it used to be. You're right in terms of, them asking for results first before actually investing. And sometimes I know, for at least from my perspective and everything I've gathered, for some companies that are really at the startup, like very early stage, it's kind of impossible to do. So it's definitely been, from what I'm hearing, a little tougher for everyone this year. And then in terms of AI being, definitely there's a lot of hype around it, but is it really bringing the same value that we anticipated it to bring, which is definitely, most people don't think is the case potentially yet. But I like the blockchain example, because I think I remember back then, so much hype around it. But now, I mean, we haven't really integrated it this way we had anticipated.
No, exactly right. But again, if you go back before that, it was mobile, everything being on your phone, and before that, it was the internet itself. And all those things did transform the world. And it's hard to imagine life before those innovations. However, they didn't happen overnight, and they took time. And they didn't replace. There's also a saying that I like, that TV didn't kill radio. And streaming didn't kill TV. It changed it, but usually we add things as opposed to replace them. And so I personally have not listened to a regular radio station in 20 years. So I'm sort of an early adopter of podcasts and streaming music, but some do, many do, and there's still a vibrant industry. And so likewise, I think people don't have to be quite as worried that if they don't go to the seminar next week on AI, that they're going to somehow fall behind by January. It's going to be a little bit slower. And from the investment standpoint, from what I've read, the venture capital world is a little bit overinvested in AI, and they're worried that for a while there, venture capitalists, I have a saying, not to be too narcissistic to quote myself, but that venture capitalists have the parenting skills of sea turtles. I mean, they just lay a bunch of eggs, and a few make it to adulthood, and they take credit for them. They don't actually nurture. They're not bears. I mean, and any AI business plan that came across their desk last year, they funded, and none of them. And 90% of them did not have merit, but they funded them anyway. Now, in a different environment, many of those, just like the cute little sea turtle babies, they hatch and they get eaten by seagulls before they hit the water, and it's sad, but that's just reality. And so so I think just being a healthy skeptic, yet not a complete cynic, because there are opportunities. A little bit of what AI is doing for our business, renting companies to the renters, so landlords to residents. We handle maintenance communications, for example. So my toilet is broken, or the back door screen door broke, or whatever. And we've been using AI for a number of years, actually. We make a big deal of it, but we just have a real language application that looks at the tone of the maintenance request. So, my God, there's water everywhere, please help. It comes to the top of the triage, and that squeak is still there on the hinge in the cabinet. When you get around to it, can you please fix it? That gets lower on the priorities, as it should be. And so something as simple as that, and that's what a human would do, back to that hospitality talent that we mentioned. In the old days, someone at the front desk, when you've got someone yelling at you on one phone and somebody else just asking to store a bag at the piece of luggage at the front desk, you have to prioritize that. And so we just have systems that help you do that. It looks at all cap. It looks at key words like flood and gushing, or something like that. And so that's a simple example of where AI really helps. But again, we don't really overhype it as being AI per se. We do have an internal joke that we should change our company name to BeHome247 AI. And in fact, it's a little bit of a pointed joke, because in our space, there are some companies that have just tacked on the AI. But again, I've been around long enough that people just put on, pets.com, and that was, a classic bust 24 years ago when the dot-com revolution came to a halt. So yeah, just changing names. It may work for a little while, but not for very long.
I think sometimes I even, just anecdotally, I saw some websites with .ai, and you would think, okay, they're an AI-based company, or they integrate AI, and they pretty much have nothing to do with AI. So it's really interesting how, a lot of companies and people have really try to ride the wave, the AI wave, but probably most of them are not even offering AI or using AI the same way.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the simple solutions. Like just as a personal consumer, I've started to play a little bit, with the GPT, like some people, and some of it's just amusing. Like tell me a story about whatever in the form of a Renaissance poem or something. That's kind of fun, but not really life changing. And the rest of it, a lot of it is just a more articulate search engine. So, which is valuable, no question, but it didn't change my life. I mean, I could just, it's not that much harder to click on the Google, URL that's returned from the search and see where it takes me. But over time, that will improve, and there are some interesting, and generally the true innovation will come from some direction that we're not anticipating, not the one that everyone's staring at. It's something totally different. But like for example, I'm sure someone's working on this, but I've had a personal a wish list item for a while to have sort of like a bug in your ear for a social situation. That over there, that's Becky Smith. Make sure you ask her about her company that she took public last month that went at this price and that price, and her husband's name is Bob. I mean, that would be hugely valuable to have that. I call it a spouse function because that's what my wife does for me. It's, if I'm at a party, just remember that's so and so, and it was his birthday last week. I'm like, thank you. But if you don't have a wife or a spouse with a perfect memory, that sort of AI would be really cool. Now there are all sorts of privacy issues and all that. Anyway, someone will
That's a
think of
great idea.
yeah,
That's a
someone will think of
great
those
product
things.
idea.
Yeah, yeah. So, because the information is there, you've got LinkedIn, you've got social media, you got your calendar. Put it all together, you could be pretty good at that.
I love that. Maybe we can dive next into maybe challenges, you feel either tech companies have been facing more of this year, or even your own experience at BeHome247.
One of the biggest challenges, and this goes across industries that are served by technology, which by definition is all industries, it's kind of a socio-psychological observation. But because when you're in a period where you were retreating from hype, meaning a couple of years ago, everything was getting funded and everyone was excited. So that actually created a little anxiety in the marketplace of decision makers. So they're like, well, everyone's doing something with AI. I need to do something. You're selling AI, great, I'll buy that. I'm exaggerating a bit, but not too much. Whereas when it's a contracting environment of skepticism and conservative thinking, there's no real impetus to make a decision today. It's almost like you'll be better rewarded you feel like you'll be rewarded by putting the buy decision off. So people will say, hey, that sounds great. In fact, we need what you're offering, but you know what? Let's just revisit it again in the second quarter. So it makes it harder for folks like us who are selling technology because our end customers are able to procrastinate because they're not feeling the social pressure of doing something. So, like for example, in our space, some landlord type companies, some companies that have many units of apartments or houses for rent, they would go to conferences, and their peers at other companies would almost make fun of them. You don't have any technology yet for digital leasing? Come on, welcome to the 21st century. But they won't hear that today. Today it's, oh, you haven't decided yet? Yeah, we haven't either. We're afraid to make a decision. We don't want to end up on the wrong side of that. And so what I'm getting at is that without the pressure, the social pressure of hype, again, I'm overusing that word hype, but the social pressure that everybody seems to be doing it, because if everybody does not seem to be doing it, the pressure is off and people will procrastinate decisions. Now, all that does is it delays demand, and the demand will be pent up, and eventually the dam will burst, and there'll be a flurry of activity again. Again, we see these cycles over and over again, and so you have to do your marketing work now to prepare for that moment. But in terms of positioning and all the usual P's of marketing. But anyway, long-winded answer. But I think that's how I would describe one of the biggest challenges that we're facing at this moment.
And then this is definitely, you're not the only one who shares that as a challenge. And I think everybody has different explanations or factors that they feel are impacting, really these longer sales cycles where, okay, we're not going to make a decision today or this month. Let's revisit this next year or whatnot. There's so many kind of theories, but I like that you brought up the social pressure And it makes sense in this specific context, right? Where maybe in the past it's, everyone's doing it, so you have the pressure to do it, but now we're not seeing the same thing. So it is impacting their decision-making process. I know you mentioned like now is a good time to do marketing because it's going to pick up later. Do you have, again, as a tech company CEO, are there maybe strategies you feel work better, or as a marketing, like are there areas or channels you are focusing on and you think there's more room for growth through?
Yeah, so there's different ways of describing it. I might start with describing it as the informal to the formal, or maybe the other way around. Start with the formal. The formal is the blocking and tackling of web presence, SEO, SEM, email strategies, all those types of things. That's just the machine that has to be in place. Then the next up is events. Now, events, this is like taking a step back in history because it's definitely the old adage of 50% is wasted. I don't know which half. But it is especially when you have a complex offering like we do, we need an extended conversation with a human to explain, to understand their needs and explain our solution. So we find that our events are very useful. I just spent 3 days in Phoenix, Arizona at a single family for rent conference. It's frustrating though, because they're so expensive. It's a lot of time, a lot of money, and it all boils down to 2 conversations among 100. But it kind of has to be done to some degree. And then the most informal, but in many ways the most effective, is networking. Just a lot of it is high-level networking with and when I say influencers, I don't mean somebody taking pictures of themselves for Instagram. I mean industry leaders, mavens that know what they're talking about, that speak well of you. And so the old adage also that the best form of marketing is a satisfied customer. And so we find that very useful. So being close to those satisfied customers, encouraging them to tell their stories, to serve as references, those types of things really help. And so that's how I would answer that question of sort of what's happening in the marketing world.
And you're right. I mean, we're going back to kind of traditional, in quotation marks, ways of doing marketing, which is going to live events, going to in-person networking events, doing good work and having satisfied customers because they will send more people your way. I think just like with COVID, a lot of these types of approaches really stopped because we couldn't meet in person. A lot of events got canceled or postponed. But now we're actually seeing people going back to that, right? Companies investing in live events again. And I think if done well, they do work, but definitely something we're hearing as well on our end in terms of strategies and marketing.
Yeah, yeah. But it is expensive. I have to acknowledge that it's expensive both with time and money, which of course is both, and that is frustrating. And a lot of industry events, there's a chicken or egg. You need enough attendees to have customers, enough advertisers to have customers, and that can be frustrating. But it is reality, and it is the way it is.
That makes sense. What does 2025 look like in terms of big initiatives or areas you want to focus more on as a tech CEO?
Yeah, primarily it's more of the same. However, I think one of the themes in the coming year is really fine-tuning our metrics of proving value. Again, it's a difficult space because, again, what we do is kind of complex, and we find that when it comes to metrics, again, people go to seminars and get whole graduate degrees on metrics and measuring stuff. And all that is very important, but it's also in the context of people's, whether they're leaning in or leaning out, meaning humans are very good at rationalizing. And so if they're inclined to do something, they'll make the metrics work. And if they're inclined not to do it, they will be in denial of what the metrics say. That said, we are trying to work on more creative ways to present our metrics to show the value. Like for a good example is energy savings in unoccupied units. Like I said, it doesn't make any sense to run your air conditioner at full blast in Texas in the summer when no one's living there. And so it's both economically sound, ecologically sound and economically sound to keep that air conditioner at 85 Fahrenheit to save energy. And everyone knows that. But what does that really mean? Does that mean 50% of the energy costs in your unoccupied unit, which is what our customers have shown to us? That's a lot. And then there's a question, do people even believe it? So anyway, but all that said, it's very important to fine tune the metrics and come down to sometimes when there are too many metrics, it's like buying a car. If there's all this different torque and this and that, but maybe it just comes down to miles per gallon. Maybe it just comes down to acceleration speed. Maybe there's just two or three things that the car buyer cares about. That's what we're trying to figure out, is what are the key numbers, rather than hitting people with a whole dashboard of insight, which is what we're proud to do. And we tend to geek out on that, but we have to keep stepping back and looking at the marketing persona and decide what should we really emphasize.
Yeah. And that's an important priority. And just from the conversations we've been having with other people in the space, that's a big question, right? Like, how do we make sure that we position our product in a way that brings the value that our ideal customer really wants to see and needs? And I think what you're saying in terms of figuring out the right metrics to share that value, it goes back to, like having a really, really strong messaging and positioning strategy, which is, I will say, like probably number one challenge that tech companies run into. That's definitely a good.
It also
priority.
changes over time. I think a lot of tech companies, they launch being sure that they're going to change the world and solve one issue, and it turns out that they don't, but they can solve some other problem. And then the art and the science is, when do you switch? Do you stay the course and stubbornly stick with what you had, which may be the right answer, maybe the wrong answer? Only looking back will tell you whether you had it right or not. But yeah, it's if it were easy, they wouldn't get us to do it. So.
Well, for sure. If any of our listeners want to hear more about you, learn more about BeHome247.
Yeah. Best place to start is our website, BeHome247.com. And then, or if you're looking for me personally, you can find me at LinkedIn. Is probably the best case. Just my name is somewhat unique, so you see it written there on the screen, and just find me on LinkedIn. And I tend to be pretty responsive. If I can be of service, please let me know.
Thank you, Peter, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
Looking forward to connecting with you and staying in touch.